All right, let's just jump right in. Imagine being able to restore someone's sight, but here's the twist. Instead of trying to fix their eyes, you go straight to the source, the brain itself. Today we're going to explore the absolutely incredible science behind building a bionic eye, not in the eye socket, but directly inside the visual cortex.
I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, doesn't it? But this is a very real, very active field of research, and it's all driven by this one incredibly ambitious question. Can we actually bypass the eyes completely and plug a camera's feed directly into the brain to create a whole new form of vision?
To even get our heads around that, we need to understand the basic building block of this artificial sight. It's a thing called a phosphene. So a phosphene is when you see a little dot of light, but no light has actually hit your eye. The easiest way to think about it? It's like a single pixel on a computer screen. But this pixel is being generated by a tiny electrical zap to a small group of neurons in your brain. Now, going from one single pixel to a clear, useful image is, as you can imagine, filled with some fascinating challenges. So here's our journey for today. We're going to tackle 4 of the biggest hurdles scientists are facing, what I'm calling the virtual pixel problem, then how to hack the brain's natural rhythms, the inconvenient fact that no brain is a perfect grid, and finally, how you turn all those pixels into actual perception.
Okay, first up, the virtual pixel problem. And this is a classic engineering headache, right? How do you create a high-resolution image when you have a very, very limited number of physical parts to work with?
I mean, think about it. To do something as basic as recognizing a loved one's face or reading some large text, you need thousands and thousands of pixels. But trying to implant that many individual electrodes into somebody's brain, it's not just impractical, it's incredibly risky. So that begs the question. How do you get more pixels without adding more hardware? Well, the solution is this really clever electrical trick called current steering. The idea is, instead of just zapping one electrode at a time, scientists zap 2 neighboring electrodes at the exact same time. And when they do that, the brain perceives a virtual phosphene, a whole new pixel of light that appears in a spot where there isn't an electrode at all.
Okay, so here's how it works. It's pretty cool. First, you stimulate electrode A, and boom, a phosphene appears right at its location. Then, you do the same for electrode B, and a phosphene shows up there. But here's where the magic happens. You stimulate A and B together, and a brand new phosphene just pops into existence, right in the middle. And by tweaking the amount of current between the two, you can actually move that virtual pixel all around the space between them.
And look, this isn't just a theory, it's a proven concept. As research from Meikle and their colleagues put it back in 2022, current steering could be used to increase the resolution of intracortical electrode arrays without altering the number of physical electrodes. So in other words, we've just managed to multiply our pixel count without any more surgery. Problem 1 solved.
All right, on to our second challenge, hacking the brain's rhythms. So we figured out a way to make more pixels, but now we have to make sure they light up efficiently and maybe most importantly, safely.
So here's the tightrope you have to walk. To create a nice, bright, clear phosphene, you need to deliver a certain amount of electricity. But the brain is incredibly delicate tissue. Using too much juice is not only inefficient, you're just wasting battery power, but it could actually be harmful. So we desperately need a way to get more bang for our electrical buck.
And the answer, it turns out, is to work with the brain instead of fighting against it. The technique is called LFP phase modulation. Basically, it's all about timing those little electrical pulses to sync up perfectly with the brain's own natural rhythmic electrical waves, what scientists call local field potentials, or LFPs. Think of it like pushing someone on a swing. You push at just the right moment in their arc, and you get a huge result with very little effort.
And the effect is, well, pretty dramatic. Research from Allison-Walker and their team showed that just by timing the stimulation to the brain's natural rhythm, they boosted the firing rate of the neurons by a whopping 48%. That's huge. It means you can get almost the same visual effect with nearly half the power, or a much stronger effect with the same power. It's a massive leap forward for both safety and efficiency. Okay, so we've got more pixels, and we've got a safer way to power them. But now we run into a much messier, more biological problem. The simple fact that no brain is a perfect grid. You know, in an engineer's dream world, implanting these electrodes would create this beautiful, orderly grid of phosphenes in someone's vision, just like the pixels on your monitor. Super simple, totally predictable, perfect for drawing shapes and letters. But reality is never that neat, is it? As we've learned from incredibly detailed brain scans from the Human Connectome Project, the way our visual world gets mapped onto our cortex is irregular, it's clumpy, and it is totally unique from one person to the next. So the phosphene map you get isn't a neat grid, it's more like a scattered, kind of distorted constellation of points.
And that messiness has very real consequences. When researchers like Wang and their colleagues ran simulations of visual tasks, they found that a person's performance dropped, and dropped significantly, when they used these realistic, messy brain-derived maps compared to those perfect, idealized grids. The big takeaway? Any system that's going to work has to be designed for the brain we actually have, not the perfect one we wish it was.
Which brings us right to our fourth and final challenge, turning all those scattered pixels into something meaningful. Into perception. So you've got the phosphenes, but what's the best way to light them up so the user can actually understand what they're supposed to be seeing?
Well, it turns out there's no single best way to do it. The best strategy actually depends entirely on what you're trying to do. Researchers tested a couple of approaches. One was simultaneous stimulation, where all the phosphenes that make up a shape light up at once. This turned out to be great for fast, reactive tasks, like trying to catch a moving ball. But for recognition tasks, like figuring out the shape of something, a different method called raster scanning worked better. That's where the phosphenes light up one after another, tracing the outline of an object. That slower, more deliberate tracing actually helps the brain figure out what it's looking at.
Okay, let's pull all that together. What a journey, right? We've navigated 4 massive hurdles on the path to building a bionic eye. First, we had the resolution problem, and we found a clever solution in virtual pixels. Then, we hit the efficiency problem, and we solved that by hacking brainwaves to work smarter, not harder. We confronted the realism problem by accepting that we need to use realistic maps of each person's brain. And finally, we addressed the perception problem with smart, task-specific displays.
And you know, when you step back and look at all of these solutions together, you start to realize something really profound. The biggest challenge here isn't just about building better hardware or smaller electrodes. It really comes down to this idea. The ultimate challenge isn't just building the hardware, it's learning to speak the brain's language.
Every single solution we've talked about, from creating virtual pixels, to timing pulses with brainwaves, to tracing out shapes, everyone is a step towards becoming more fluent in that complex biological language. And it just makes you wonder, if we can learn to speak the brain's language for sight, what other conversations are just waiting for us to start?